Hello everyone, today we're taking a look at the Eachine Novice 4. This comes as a ready-to-fly package. It has goggles, has a radio, and it's got everything else you need to get started. In the package, you can also buy it with 4 batteries. The kit I have came with 2, but I'm a little bit concerned about this. No, I should say I'm quite a bit of concern. 4-inch long range all have these really skinny arms. They're trying to maximize flight time, and they've added things like a GPS and a beeper on the back of these things. So they've cut some weight by using bi-blades on the props and real skinny carbon. And oftentimes in a package format where you have goggles and a radio and a charger and batteries and all the things you need to get started in this hobby at a good price point, such as this one, it can be very, very appealing. But my concern is, I don't think this should be your first quad. You can be one of your first quads, but I would highly encourage you, if you like the looks of this and you're thinking about buying it, pick up something else that's smaller and lighter and isn't going to break on the first crash, like a Whoop. Because I think this, depending upon what the first crash is, if it's not from 8 or 10 or 12 inches, we're probably going to break an arm on that first crash. And the best pilots crash, even when you're slow cruising around. Flying's not easy. Let's get down to the specs with that warning in mind. We'll cover everything that comes in this package. Oh, by the way, I have 2. I've only been flying this one though, but I have 2, and I found an inconsistency in the setup of these quads. I thought they're supposed to be identical, but it's just a talking point. We'll cover that in the flight. It comes with the Radio Master TX12 radio, which is a good small-ish or medium-sized format for flying. It has all the appropriate switches that you need. It does not come with the sound pack, so it won't holler at you. Although when you're flying this quad, when the RSSI gets to about 40, it does beep at you to let you know. Nice little warning reminder. It's already bound and set up to the quad. It also comes with the Eachine EV 800DM goggles. These are the replacement goggles for the long standard 800Ds and 800s before them. It's got a slimmer profile than what we've seen on past Eachine D800 series. It does have all the buttons that you would normally have. It does come with a patch antenna and a circular polarized antenna. It also has a search button for searching your band and frequency, your power connector so that you can plug it in and power. It does come with that wall wart as well. Your micro SD card slot. You will have to supply your own SD card in order to record your DVR. We've got audio video in, and we've got the button for our DVR, which is to record the video of you flying. Or it says pick. Short press, it takes a picture. Long press, you get a red dot on the screen, and it's recording the entire flight. And it telescopes out, which can be a super handy feature. If you remember, for those longtime subscribers, when I reviewed these goggles, I had focus problems. With this set, I'm able to focus just fine. So either my set that I reviewed a year ago or whatever it was were either defective, or I didn't have them telescoped far enough out, because I did find I needed to be all the way out because of my less than perfect vision. It comes with a very simple 1 battery at a time charger, as well as the wall connector to plug this in to charge batteries. It comes with 2 Eachine 1100 milliamp 4S batteries. They're kind of short, stocky batteries. I expect them to be a little bit longer. There's also a Fly More kit, which has 4 batteries. Comes with an accessory pack for your goggles, so that's your audio video in cable. This is your power cable for charging the goggles, and the power brick or wall adapter that you need for charging the goggles. The TX12 radio also came with the 18650 batteries that you need for running this. All you have to do is plug it in. There's a warning on here making sure you know not to change the polarity or how these batteries go in its case. In this package, we have an extra set of props. We've got some spare screws. We've got an extra foam battery mat, a tiny little screwdriver, and a hex tool. This is a USB-C cable, so you can charge your radio. It's also got this little plug that goes in where your antenna is. This little mount and screws is used for a Insta360 Go camera. This would be the original Go camera, not the new Go 2. But the Go 2 might squeeze in there. We also get this manual, which lays things out fairly well for you. Powering the Novice 4 are NC 1404 2750 kV motors on 4-inch bi-blade props. The all-in-one flight controller is a generic flight controller. It does have 1 megabyte of black box or flash memory, and it's a 25 amp ESC. The VTX back here is just called a Whoop VTX, and it's supposed to run from 25 milliwatts to 400 milliwatts, power switchable, using either the button that you see here on the back or through your OSD using your radio. The camera that's in here is the Cadix Baby Ratel 2. That's a really nice nano camera. This GPS module is the Eachine Mini M8N GPS module. It's also got a lost model alarm, but this one's fairly interesting in that you have to press this button, long press it, in order to activate it as a beeper or a lost model alarm. It weighs a little over 127.5 grams, and with the included battery, it weighs just over 218 and 1/4 grams. The arms are 3mm thick and 6mm wide. We've got 2 sandwich plates here, with each one being 1.5mm thick. Top plate is also 1.5mm thick. And motor post to motor post, it's longer than my calipers will go. So this is gonna fly for 14 minutes and 17 seconds. Again, on the stock battery, 1100 milliamp 4S battery. I'm not running any sort of external HD camera or anything of that nature. And before you leave or you move on, please again, heed the warning. If this is your first quad, please don't buy it as the first quad you fly. If you like the kit, get something that's going to be smaller. I'm a micro guy, so I'm very biased about starting out small. Other people are going to have different opinions, and that's okay. But for me, I think starting out small allows you to fly more. You can fly inside. You can fly inside a single room. You can take it outside and fly in calm winds. You can fly it in more aggressive winds, but I live in a windier place, so flying a 30-gram whoop outside, that could be a little bit of a stretch on the fun factor. But don't buy this by itself. If you're going to buy this, don't buy it by itself. That's the thing I'm probably going to say 100 times as we watch this super long flight. And you don't have to watch the super long flight. I wouldn't feel bad. Skim around, see the parts you want to see. It's not a true long-range flight. Of course, a true long-range flight requires some different hardware. You know, we'd probably want to go Crossfire or Tracer or Ghost or Express LRS or something like that. So this is going to get you good range. The receiver that's inside this is the R81, and that'll probably get you further than I'm getting. Of course, you see the RSSI on screen, you know, bouncing around at 40s and 50s. Keep in mind, it's very humid. Those clouds that you see in the sky, those rain clouds, they're normally raining, and so all this vegetation that I'm flying around is soaking wet, and it's very humid out. It's not bright sunny skies. It's just not good conditions for flying and getting the best possible reception, whether it's control link or video link. But I go as far out as this little section allows me to fly safely, and I do have my spotters out with me. We got about 300 meters out. I think you could probably double that if you have clear line of sight. We're kind of, depending upon the height of the quads, behind those trees. But again, don't buy this as your first and only quad. If you like the package and you like the sort of flight style and the fact that it's got a lost model alarm and GPS, great. You know, you always got to be happy with what you purchase. So I wouldn't want to tell you not to buy something if you like it. But if you buy this, please buy it with something else that's going to be more durable. I don't think these arms, which you don't get any spares of, are going to live through much of a crash. And this package, oftentimes, when it comes as a package, I know when I got started, I was looking at packages. That's the easiest way for someone to get into the hobby. And if you're getting into the hobby, that means you probably don't fly very well. It's not organic to too many people because flying isn't easy. It takes some time. It takes some training. It sometimes takes some wallet. In order to be able to gain those skills. You can spend all sorts of time in the simulators like Velocidrone or Tiny Whoop Go or any other drone simulator that's out there. And that's going to get you some familiarity, but it's just different than real world. Real world is your stress level goes up because you know it's real, and then maybe you have a hard time remembering what the switches do, like GPS rescue. Where's that switch? And all of a sudden, maybe you hit the disarm switch. Now it's tumbling out of the sky. What do you do now? What switch did I just hit? You know, these things happen to all of us at some point early on in our stage, and then we start to become comfortable with our setups, and we do the same thing over and over and over again. So there's nothing really wrong with the quad and how they've assembled it or the components they've used. It's just me trying to keep those people who are entering the hobby happier longer by not just buying this and expecting this to live through a bunch of crashes, and you're going to crash. I've been flying 5 years and I still crash. So We're all going to crash. It's one of those terrible, humorous parts about this hobby is we crash. Sometimes we cry. Sometimes we laugh. Sometimes we, well, yeah, I was doing something I wasn't ready to do, and then I crashed. So my fault. But get something that you can crash before you take this one out and fly it. That's my suggestion. Not a bad kit, not a bad price. The goggles are really serviceable, I think, for a really wide audience. They have all the features that you would typically look for in a budget or entry-style goggles. Same can be said for the radio. Radio Master, the TX12, is probably a personal favorite of many people that are out there. That mid-sized radio is quite popular. It's not what I use, but many people do. That, especially if you need to go pack to fly, it's nice to have a smaller radio. The antenna is detachable, so you don't have to worry about breaking that off. It comes with batteries for the radio, so you only have to buy another battery to run those. It's really and truly a ready-to-fly kit. It's already bound to the quad. They've got modes and switches set up to where you can go in and you can arm and disarm, and you can see the response within Betaflight. And I mentioned in the intro there was some inconsistency in the setup. Now, again, I have 2 of these. I've only flown one of them, and I noticed the Betaflight configuration was different. On the one I'm flying right now, it didn't have GPS rescue on, and it didn't have failsafe for GPS rescue either. So if I were to failsafe way out here, it wouldn't come back to me because those 2 things aren't on. But on the other one, the one I didn't fly, it does have GPS rescue turned on in failsafe and for a mode. So it's already assigned to a switch and everything. So that one is more ready to fly than this one, in my opinion. But it's fairly simple to set those things up. All the difficult work of wiring the GPS and setting it to the right UART and doing the things we need to do to make it communicate, that stuff already works. We just have to set it in the failsafe mode that we want it to return to home rather than just fall out of the air, because normally with racing quads, we just want on failsafe, we want them to disarm, tumble out of the air. And then set a switch to the GPS rescue mode, so if you get a video problem, then you can hit that switch and it will do its thing in GPS rescue. So we've flown around for getting close to 7 minutes here, and I've given you all the warnings I can. Some additional details: if you're using GPS rescue, the minimum distance away before GPS rescue will work is 100 meters. You can probably tweak that out through some Betaflight settings. I've never tinkered with them, though, because that seems pretty reasonable. Also, a minimum of 6 satellites is required, and you see that I have 8. I have seen this at 9 at my home. In my backyard, I did see this get to 9, but I never saw it get to more than 9. Betaflight itself doesn't handle GPS rescue great, and from what I've read and talked to others, my understanding is iNav does a much better job. Also, it could use a barometer as another mechanism or device to help it use GPS rescue and kind of guiding itself back home. Maybe even a compass. But so it will, you can see the home arrow on the right side of the screen. It's following us around, so it has a pretty good idea. And if you're in a bad situation, it's going to be way better than nothing at all. So I don't want to bag on Betaflight and how it handles GPS rescue too much. It's just, if you expect it to come back and land next to you, then you shouldn't expect that. It's very likely that you'll get it close to you, you'll hear it or see it, and then you should disable the GPS rescue and take control, if you can, and fly it back home. If you're completely uncomfortable with what has happened, whatever, out in your flying space, maybe you just have to ride GPS rescue out and then do the walk to go pick it up. But hopefully as you can tell with the baby Ratel as we cruise around this big open field, well, it's not all that big considering that if I'd have left the confines of the city limits, I probably could have found a bigger one. But this is kind of a floodplain that's open to the public, and I've been over here a few times. We used to take the kids over here to sled when they were younger. But the camera's nice. It's not a nice day, of course. Thankfully, it didn't rain on us while we were out there. But you've probably been able to see some birds. You can see me and one of the kids sitting down on that hill. We brought some lawn chairs out. We've got 2 other girls out there. One of them's out there playing in the field, and hopefully she's paying attention. She's hollering out on her cell phone, or I can hear her on the cell phone. They've all 3 got cell phones. You can probably envision what our cell phone bill is every month now. As we creep over the 9-minute mark, starting to march up towards 10 minutes, this is a very slow, steady, cruisy sort of flight. You can see where it's got the altitude. I'm usually around 17 to 25 meters in the air, somewhere in there. You can see our speed on the right-hand side as well. Right at the moment, we're doing somewhere in the mid-40s in kilometers per hour. And we also, you see the H with the little icon there and the number scrolling by with the M on the right. That is our distance from home. Surely by now you've picked that up. But again, if this is your first quad and you're looking at it, those things are things to notice. Down at the bottom, now that we're over 10 minutes, it will flash the time. That's not a warning. That is just what Betaflight does when you get to 10 minutes. I'm sure we can change that. I have actually never investigated that. If anyone knows how you can turn off the flashing 10 minutes or change that to, say, 17 minutes or whatever, please leave that in the comments section below. I'm sure it's just a command that we issue on the CLI, the Betaflight configuration app, and we can change that number. Maybe it's hard set. I'm not well versed. If this is your first quad, again, you want to pay attention to the left-hand side, which has your voltage for your battery. The top number is your average cell, average per cell voltage, and the lower number is your total voltage. Because I fly quads that might be 1S, 2S, 3S, 4S, I've even done up to 6S. I follow the average cell voltage, the top number on the left hand, and we want to bring it in, or at least if you're flying at distance, and you're at, say, 3.6 volts per cell, I think that's a relatively good spot to start bringing it back, depending upon how far away you are. But for me, ideally, what I want to do is I want to land, and I want to have the battery recover. In other words, your voltage will go below, and then when you disarm, the voltage will creep back up because you're not powering the motors and the props anymore. I want it to be at 3.5 volts per cell. In this particular case, I'm not going to fly it down much below 3.5 volts. You could tell I'm keeping it relatively closely. I'm keeping it relatively close to us. I'm just kind of circling out in the field, always trying to give myself a easy dash back home, because even though I've flown these batteries in the backyard, when I'm flying this style and I'm flying out in a big open field, I don't want to go marching around in that field. I just don't. The kids don't mind it, but I'm an older guy. I don't want to go marching out there. So I keep it closer because I know that voltage is relatively low. I'm not going out to the extents of the field. The goggles come with a patch antenna, and patch means it's directional. You'll hear those terms kind of interchangeably, and you want to point that patch at the furthest distance you're going to be flying. Someone like Wesley Vardy, and you should, if you're interested in long-range stuff, you should definitely check out his channel. He's the one guy I'm aware of that does true long-range testing. And I'm not certain of his location, and if I did know his location, I probably wouldn't disclose it so he can keep doing that testing, because I think it's really important for the community and those people interested in long-range flying that they see all of Wesley's videos. He does a really nice job. It's Wesley with a Z, Wesley Vardy. I'll put a link to his channel down in the video description if you want to go check it out. I don't know if he has this quad. I think he mainly sticks to testing receivers on his wing. But he has done some tremendous testing. But we're getting really close to that 3.5 volts per cell, and we're going to be landing this guy in about a minute. I think I said at the beginning of the video, our total flight time for this is going to be 14 minutes and 17 seconds, which is a good long flight. So if you had a 3000 milliamp 4S lithium ion pack, which is an expensive battery, last I checked, they were $45 to $50 for that single battery. But you can discharge lithium ion a little bit lower, and you have a much bigger battery, but you are carrying that additional weight of that bigger battery. I wouldn't be surprised if you can get 25, maybe even 27 or 30 minutes possibly. It's gonna vary from place to place depending upon your altitude, how much wind you have out, humidity, everything that affects air and its movement, or things being able to move through the air. They affect our quads too. This is the point where the beeper's now going off because I did press that button, a long pressing the button on the lost alarm finder down on the bottom. So once you get below 3.5 volts per cell, that starts beeping, and it is quite loud. I can plug it in for you at the desk just so you get a sample to hear it. But even outside with the birds, the crickets, and all the creatures, we could hear that. We weren't that far away, but it was fairly ear-piercing at the distance we were at. That is my son, one of my spotters, out there giving Dad a hand. Let's head back to the desk. We'll talk about a few finer points on this quad. All right, the first thing I don't want to do is plug this in real quick. Let me turn on my radio so I don't get some unintended consequences here. As you can hear, I've got the radio on, no sound pack, so it doesn't say "Open, welcome to OpenTX." Let's turn it on here. And our lost model alarm here is on the bottom, and hopefully you can see there's this little button down here, and we have to long press that in order to enable the beeper and the lost model alarm. Essentially, it does nothing just in this capacity. So I'm going to get my fingernail down on that button. I'm going to press and hold for a moment. Hopefully you heard that, super loud, and the green light. That means it's activated. That means it will alarm. Let me see if I can remember which switch it is. I don't want to arm this thing. Okay, here's the alarm. I'm going to sound it here for you. Okay. I have sleeping children, so that's as far as we're going to go with that right now. So it's a standard sized buzzer. And it's very, very loud. They've got it cut out here on the end, so where the sound is emitted is free and clear. It's not obstructed path. It is a buzzer that does seem like it's not cleanly mounted. Again, this is when you're looking at budget, there's all sorts of sacrifices that we oftentimes make. So the quad's not going to sit flat on the ground because this is obviously, it's got a outcropping here. It is encased in TPU, which is fine, but it's not, buried within the quad. So if you had a hard crash, there's a possibility this could come ripped off. Say you go blasting by a tree and all of a sudden you lose video. There's our warning. Now to turn that off, if you can hear me, we long press again. There, now it's off. So you have to long press that button when you plug your battery in order to activate those features. But as I was saying, so if you lose video as you're blasting by a tree or rock or something, and it were to catch here and tear this off, which, that's possible. It's a small area. You probably have other problems if you're that out of control, but it could happen. It does look like their print is set up for a crossfire receiver. You can see those holes. That's typically what we see for crossfire receivers, which are true long range. You could tell here I've got this black hot glue, and they recommend in the instructions to put hot glue. I glued these in once and had them fall out. So the second time what I did was I lined up the tube on the antenna, and then I just squeezed a bunch of hot glue in there and quickly shoved the antenna down, and then I went around it with some more hot glue, just to make sure it stayed down in there. I also found that the rear antenna had a propensity to kind of wiggle out in flight. When I got done with that flight that you just saw, the antenna was quite loose. It was just kind of out here on the very edge of the TPU. I'm not a fan of foam battery mats. That means that their battery doesn't get much grip, so if you go into a forward crash, your battery likely ejects. Along with the battery ejection is the battery pigtail is not secured to the frame of the quad, so if you have a battery ejection and the battery goes forward, it's going to eventually pull on this until the point it disconnects, and this wire is connected down to your all-in-one board. When that all happens, oftentimes, or in some cases, if the battery connector does not give way in time, it can pull one or more of the wires off the pad on the flight control. So I would highly recommend taking a zip tie and circling some portion of the frame and those wires and hunkering it down. But give yourself a little wrinkle or a little bit of relaxed wire between where you hunker it down with your zip tie and the ESC pads. The camera position, hopefully you can see that this does have a slot so you can move your camera forward and back. It does also mean that your camera can get kind of cattywampus in there as well, but the ability to move it forward and back, I believe, is a good ability, because then you can provide yourself more camera protection. Like how I have it now, the camera is completely protected unless you were to center something perfectly right through this gap. The battery strap, it's not going to be my favorite. I prefer, if I'm going to have a standard battery strap running a larger 4S battery, that it has a metal buckle. I haven't broken a lot of the plastic ones. It's just my comfort level. I want a metal buckle. It gives me more comfort. Let me know if you feel the same way, or if your experience is the same in that you just would rather have a metal buckle. We have the tape that I oftentimes talk about. I'm not sure if it's actually called acetate tape, but I refer to it as Emax tape because Emax was one of the first companies that I'm aware of to start using this motor wire or this tape to secure down motor wire, and I appreciate that stuff. Actually, I have a fairly good roll myself. If you're wondering about this tape, which I usually get one question every time I mention the tape, way down in the bottom of the video description I have a link of like the stuff that I fly, the stuff that I use. There's one that says Emax tape, and it has a link to the Emax shop, which is oftentimes sold out. But there's also a link to Amazon, so hopefully you can use Amazon to purchase it, or you can get a fix on what it's called and find maybe a local shop that carries it for you. If you find that this package is attractive to you and you want to enter this hobby, again, I'm not going to tell you not to, but I would highly encourage you to buy something like a Whoop. You can look for the Mobula 6, you can look for the Mobula 7, you can look for the Mobilite 6, the Mobilite 7, AE65. I'm mentioning stuff that's all available on Banggood because this kit's sold by Banggood. The Uzi 65 is also another Whoop, something that you can fly indoors and outdoors, so you can get all sorts of stick time, and you can crash them, and the repairs are either dead simple because all their components just kind of plug in, you see everything's connected like that, or it's just a matter of gluing the frame. This happens to be the V3 frame of the Mobula 7, which I've been flying around doing testing with my Express LRS all-in-one flight controller board in there. But this kit is fine. It's just not going to last in very many crashes, if more than the most modest of crashes. You know, the goggles have all the features you can look for. You can grow with the goggles. You can grow with the radio. You can use those on other quads, say a Whoop, a Mobula, like I mentioned. You do have batteries. The charger itself, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just a balanced charger. Oftentimes, this can get you started. You know, it's only going to charge one battery at a time, and it's not going to charge them fast. So you have to have your patient pants on and charge in your spare time. But it's got everything you need to get started, and it's got a fairly attractive price point. Hopefully your budget can include getting one more quad that you can actually start your FPV journey with and fly, and then get to your goal or your trophy or the much excitement. Oftentimes in this hobby, we have to temper our excitement so we don't do something we're not ready for. And I think one of those things that we'd have to temper ourselves is a first-time pilot or someone who isn't highly experienced in RC or flying FPV, going out flying long range, especially in acro mode, and flying this quad with these very thin, very skinny arms, and it really lasting, because the first thing you do is you break an arm on your first crash, maybe your second crash or your third crash, and now you're waiting for a new arm to come in. That's not fun. So I've given so many warnings. I apologize if this is sounding over negative, but I want everybody to have fun and have a good time, and having a down quad isn't one of them. So if you have any comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise, please let me know in the comments section below. I appreciate your time. Thanks for watching.